Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Rollie, you look pissed off. What's up?
I'm pissed off and frustrated because these climate protesters can't protest right.
Rollie, are you just mad that Just Stop Oil interrupted a pool tournament?
It was a snooker tournament, and yes.
Okay, Rollie, today we are going to talk about climate protests, and there's been a lot of different types, some of them more high profile than others, and specifically I want to talk about criticism of the way people are protesting in museums.
Okay.
So, Rollie, have you heard about this? What's your take?
You hear about this,
You
Kevin?
hear this?
You hear about this? Yeah, I've heard about this. In my recollection, it was like a lot of cans of soup and other various foodstuffs that were thrown at some famous and semi-famous and not famous paintings.
Yeah, that's about right. So here is like the basics of what happened. So in October of 2022, there were a couple protest incidents that happened that made international news.
Okay.
On October 14th, 2022, two Just Stop Oil activists named Anna Holland and Phoebe Plummer threw tomato soup onto the glass-covered 1888 painting by Van Gogh called Sunflowers.
Now, I notice you're saying glass-covered, so the soup got on the glass.
Well, yes, we're getting to that.
Okay,
But yes,
interesting.
it did get on the glass, but the 17th century frame that it was in did need some repair, but the painting itself was unharmed.
Okay.
Then a week and a half later, on October 24th, 2022, two activists from the group Last Generation, although it's in German, so it's Let's Degeneration.
Let's degenerate, baby.
They threw mashed potatoes at Claude Monet's painting Les Moules.
Okay.
Or the Haystacks at the Museum Barberini in Potsdam, Germany.
Okay.
And these are the two that probably got the most media attention. But around that time, there were about 40 other similar incidents of protesters throwing things at artworks. None of them were damaged as far as I can tell, but the aim was to be disruptive and to imply damage to the artwork.
Quick question.
Yes.
Did any piece of art that I've ever heard of get threatened by potato soup or whatever?
The Mona Lisa.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
but
that's
we'll talk about this, but the Mona Lisa is like behind bulletproof glass.
right.
Yeah.
You couldn't get to that thing even if you were Mr. Bean.
You know, I think somehow Mr. Bean could.
Okay, gotcha.
What would happen is Mr. Bean would drop something behind the glass and he would try to go in and
like
get
his
it.
keys
and then,
or something.
And then he would become stuck behind the glass next to the Mona Lisa.
And he'd have to do the Mona Lisa
yeah,
face.
he'd have.
And people would walk in and be like, the daughter would look at it and the mom would be like, sweetheart, let's keep moving. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. What would happen is it would be uncovered. Mr. Bean would be in front of it.
Yes.
Climate protesters would throw cake and it hits Mr. Bean and
National hero.
National hero.
Yes,
he
exactly.
protects the Mona Lisa. Okay. Yes. So now that we have written the perfect Mr. Bean movie, let's get back on track. I think of all of the art protests, probably the tomato soup at the Van Gogh painting is the most well known. And I want to talk a little bit about all these art protests today and sort of use it as a lens to think about protesting generally. But also there have been a lot of these incidents and there's a lot of different ways to protest. So I'm doing the best we can in one episode.
Great.
We're trying to scope appropriately for one episode.
Scope appropriate.
So shortly after these protests, obviously a lot of people were talking about them. Here's one of the more extreme examples from our friends at Fox and Friends. And you might notice a familiar face in this clip.
Hey.
These climate crazies, what is going on, Kennedy?
We need to shove weights inside of them so they realize the heaviness of their crimes.
Shove weights inside of them.
Yes. So they realize the heaviness of their crimes.
Is she saying we want to throw them off a boat? Shove weights in them? Like
Ben and I had almost verbatim this exact same conversation when we were first watching this clip. It's not clear to me whether she just wants them to eat the weights and that would be uncomfortable, or whether it's a you'll swim with the fishes kind of thing.
Is it possible this was right around that time that all those fish were getting discovered with weights in them and those fishermen were getting disqualified?
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Maybe it's possible.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I remember there's this one really iconic clip where a fisherman's like, "There's weights in them," and like they discover all these weights, and these guys just get like totally laughed out of the fish competition.
I don't think that has anything to do with this, but it's nice knowing what the background is. Anyway, she wants to drown climate protesters or something.
I'm so sick of these people. They make me want to drive a V8 and eat meat. Like every time I see them, all I want to do is get in a gas guzzler with a lettuce wrapped cheeseburger because I can't eat the bun. And they make me want to do the opposite of whatever they believe in.
Sorry, were you not already eating meat and driving a gas guzzler?
I mean, it's also like she's so close. Like
Yeah.
I can't eat the bun because obviously our society forces me to conform to a very specific understanding of what a beautiful woman looks like. I would love to eat,
She might be allergic.
Okay, maybe.
I think they're empty-headed losers.
Right, it's counterproductive. Like, who says, yes, you threw the tomato soup, I'm in?
When I first saw the story, I thought this is terrible. Then you just read there's glass on it?
Yes.
So they did nothing.
Hegseth.
Surprise! Hegseth, by the way, wearing American flag socks.
Amazing.
They're going to wipe it off with some Windex, and the Van Gogh is going to be fine.
Yes.
So they're actually, in addition to being stupid, they're not effective.
They did damage the frame, Emily.
They did, and also the wall. I would have loved to see a security guard tackle both of them because clearly they've never understood what it's like to be accountable for their actions or to not be hailed as a champion for some type of childlike and childish theme. Look at them. They're like 12.
This is a really funny thing that Hegseth is like, oh, so the Van Gogh's fine. And they're like, yeah, the Van Gogh's fine. And so it's like, oh, so not only are they incredibly disruptive, but they didn't even disrupt anything.
Yes.
It's like, what are you mad about? That's not two things to be mad about. That's no things to be mad about.
So, this is Fox News, and so obviously they're unhinged.
Okay.
But, this, I would say, is, pretty indicative of a lot of the conversation around this particular protest.
There is something that I have always thought about here where it's like, what? The Potsdam Museum? They put tomato sauce over Clover's Gloost period? It's like, you don't know any of those proper nouns that you just said. You are just finding out about this painting because a bunch of kids poured soup on the glass outside of it. What are you mad about?
I have a hard time believing that somebody like Pete Hegseth or Ainsley or anybody else on the Fox and Friends couch is like, yes, I have a deep appreciation for Van Gogh's oeuvre. I do love Van Gogh, and I can name a number of his paintings. This is probably a good time for me to disclose I personally am just biased in favor of these protesters. When I saw it, I was impressed, and I thought it was cool and brave, and so I'm inclined to defend it. Also, a lot of the people that I'm going to show clips of are people who I find irritating for other reasons. So I am aware that I can't be completely objective about this. I'm going to try to assess this as neutrally as possible. But I know going into this, I'm pro-protester. And I think some listeners are going to find this episode a little bit frustrating because it is not as hard science-y as some of our other episodes. It's a bit more philosophical in nature.
We're going to get you, Climate Deniers Playbook. Not enough numbers in this one.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not a numbers gal. It's hard to attribute support for the climate movement to any one specific action. Occasionally, you'll get something like Taraji P. Henson talking about Project 2025 on the BET Awards, and you can track track the spike in Google searches, and that is a pretty direct correlation. But for everything else, it can be hard to say for sure what impact any one protest action had on anything else. But the thesis that I want to make here is that the argument that you hear a lot are these people are making me do the opposite of what they want, or they're hurting the climate movement. You're not going to win people over this way.
Yeah, you're not going to win the fucking Fox and Friends group over.
Yeah.
Who are already we think this is a big hoax, dude. I don't know what to tell you.
That's the kind of stuff that you hear, but actually unpopular actions have been part of every successful protest movement in history. And in fact, if they were popular, they wouldn't really be protests. Their protests by nature are opposing the status quo. And I'm not here to argue that you have to like food being thrown at art. In fact, the protest kind of relies on your deep feelings of not liking it to be effective. But there are a number of ways that people talk about these protesters that delegitimize them and kind of the movement as a whole. And I think sort of neuters conversation within the climate movement about potential tactics and what counts as a valid form of protest.
Cool.
But this is the rare occasion where it isn't just knee-jerk disapproval of the left from Fox and Friends. There is bipartisan criticism, which also often comes from people who I generally find pretty annoying.
You name me one annoying person who's trying desperately to be bipartisan.
Well, you're in luck because I happen to have this clip of CNN's Jake Tapper.
Baseless accusations, trolling, smearing. It does seem as though political debates too often exist at the intellectual level of an infant making a mess with food in order to get attention. So perhaps it's actually not so surprising to see protests about a very important issue reduced to this. Over the weekend, a pair of German protesters threw mashed potatoes at Claude Monet's painting Grain Stacks in a museum in Potsdam. Earlier this month, tomato soup was smeared on Vincent van Gogh's sunflowers at the National Gallery in London. It isn't all high-end art, of course, at Madame Tussauds in London. 2 people smeared chocolate cake on the wax figure of King Charles. When there's no museum around, the supermarket's milk case seems to work. These so-called milk pour stunts are becoming more common across the UK. The paintings are all covered in glass, so thankfully they're all fine. But spare a thought for the grocery clerk who had to clean up all that milk.
Yeah, and I'm showing you these clips in part just to show that, like, voices from across the spectrum have, like, a lot of disdain for these climate protesters, are really writing them off as, like, stupid and childish. Jake Tapper compared them to babies.
Both Fox and Friends and Jake Tapper, CNN, infantilized these protesters as being, like, hysterical little children.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. I know we're destroying your earth, but, like, I need my milk dry, brother.
So first of all, there is some historical precedent for this kind of protest. There's several examples of destroying art. In 1974, a guy spray painted Picasso's Guernica in protest of bail for one of the guys who committed the My Lai massacre. The Mona Lisa has been targeted a bunch of times for some very legitimate protests, like a woman in a wheelchair who was protesting lack of disability access in the museum that it was being shown in. And then there were some people who were just kind of disgruntled about personal issues who threw stuff at the Mona Lisa. And that is why it is now behind bulletproof glass. And then there are also several examples of artists defacing artwork as a form of art in itself, both with permission and without permission of the original artist. So this is not like the first time anybody's thought about, like, what if I damaged a painting? But probably the most famous example, and the one that you hear referenced the most often, is the example of the suffragettes in the United Kingdom.
Yeah. Oh, UK.
The UK.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't even occur to me that there were suffragettes in the United Kingdom. I truly thought it was just a U.S. thing.
Yeah, it's women in the UK actually still can't vote. They run around on their fish trolleys. Who's the king then?
I don't think those women should be able to vote.
Even though I am a woman, when I do an impression of an English woman, I do the Monty Python doing a woman voice.
It is. I would say it's probably offensive to Brits, but I think they would also think it's funny.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, the suffragettes in the UK. So they also damaged a few paintings. Again, the most Sorry.
I love painting. I love all the paintings. Van Gogh's Starry Night and the Mona Lisa and the Louvre.
That's a museum.
And all those statues with no arms.
That's the Venus
de
Milo.
I love art. No, why they're taking the art away?
The most famous one, the one that's referenced the most often, particularly in the context of the modern protests, and we'll actually see a clip of this soon, is Mary Richardson, who on March 10th, 1914, attacked a painting by Diego Velázquez called the Rokeby Venus, which depicts a naked lady from the back, and at the time is one of the very few nudes on display.
Naked lady from the back. I think you mean the Roque de Uranus. What's up? Got it in there.
She went to the museum. She had a big meat cleaver and she hacked at the painting a bunch of times. She made a bunch of slashes in the painting. Worth noting, just right off the top, she cut up the painting. It wasn't the glass in front of the painting. She fucked up the painting.
Got it.
And to me, there's a pretty clear lineage between what the suffragettes were doing and what the soup protesters are doing. So she slashed this painting, and then after her arrest, she explained her actions on the basis that I have tried to destroy the picture of the most beautiful woman in mythological history as a protest against the government destroying Mrs. Pankhurst, who is the most beautiful character in modern history. Justice is an element of beauty as much as color and outline on canvas. And here, Mrs. Pankhurst refers to Emmeline Pankhurst, who is a campaigner for voting rights and the leader of the militant Women's Social and Political Union, who had been arrested really violently the day before. So basically what she's saying is, you all care a lot about this hot lady in a painting, but you are disregarding the welfare of an actual human woman who is fighting for other women. And that to me draws kind of a direct line to these climate protesters who had similar motivations. But would you believe Jake Tapper disagrees with me?
Oh.
All of this is part of a series of protests that we're told are about the role of fossil fuels in climate change.
Okay.
If you put that together on your own, congratulations.
If we put together that people wearing Just Stop Oil shirts are protesting oil, what could it possibly mean other than just stop oil? Jake Tapper, I'm sorry. You know what? Please continue.
All of this is part of a series of protests that we're told are about the role of fossil fuels in climate change. If you put that together on your own, congratulations. Spectacle has long served a purpose in protest, of course, everything from naked women showering in the streets to a guy with a sign climbing well-known landmarks, even a globe-trotting giant inflatable baby Trump balloon have been employed to grab attention, draw cameras to issues of some sort. Now, admittedly, some tactics work better than others. But this isn't a suffragette slashing a painting at the National Gallery more than 100 years ago. That was about how men viewed women in art in Diego Velázquez's Rockaby Venus. And it's not the Sons of Liberty tossing tea into Boston Harbor. The objective in those cases went beyond a viral moment, of course. That requires convincing people, mobilizing them to demand action.
What in the fuck is this man talking about?
It's wild.
I mean, like, I'm genuinely wondering what he could possibly mean by that, where he's like, now, this injuring art has nothing to do with a protest that also injured art from the past. Well, that's different.
He says that this is about the way that men view art. It's not about the right to vote. And here's the thing. They did pick that painting in part because it was a hot naked lady and the suffragettes rejected the objectification and everything that came with it.
Yeah.
But Mary Richardson explicitly yelled as she was being dragged out of the gallery, "Yes, I am a suffragette. You can get another picture, but you cannot get another life," as they are killing Mrs. Pankhurst. She subsequently said, "I had to draw a parallel between the public's indifference to Mrs. Pankhurst's slow destruction and the destruction of some financially valuable object. A painting came to mind. Yes, the Venus of Velázquez had painted hanging in the National Gallery." This is explicitly not about the way men view art. It is about women's suffrage.
Yeah, it sounds like it was like a little Easter egg that it was a hot lady.
Yes.
But ultimately it was about like, oh, I'm destroying art like you're destroying a person.
Yes.
And that's exactly what the
climate protesters are doing.
I guess what Jake Tapper might be referencing is that, like, this lady from history that we know about did it in kind of a funnier way, I guess, or like a more direct way, or like her metaphor was cleaner.
So that's interesting because May 4th, 1914, Mary Wood.
May the 4th be with you.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
See, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't have known at the time how funny
because Star Wars
it was.
happened a long, long time ago.
I guess that's true.
Fuck you, Nicole. Got him.
On May 4th, 1914, Mary Wood slashed a portrait of Henry James by John Singer Sargent, saying, quote, "I have tried to destroy a valuable picture because I wish to show the public that they have no security for their property nor their art treasures until women are given political freedom." So that one doesn't have anything to do with a hot lady, unless you regard Henry James as a hot lady, in which case that's fine. Whether or not Jake Tapper intends to do this, and I don't think he does, I think he just wants to be a worldly guy who appreciates art and wants things done the right way.
I think he's just reading off a fucking teleprompter. Is what I think.
I mean, I think he probably had a large say in the editorial direction, even if he didn't write those specific lines. But for me, this serves as disinformation because it draws a distinction between the acts of the suffragettes, which history has largely validated, even if you in the modern day don't agree with what they did. Like, in retrospect, like, boy, we really should have let women vote. And like, that is an important historical event now.
I mean, I think one could conclude that letting women vote is the cause of all these current problems that we have. So
one could.
Yeah. One shouldn't. One wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
To me, this kind of argument serves as disinformation because it draws a distinction between historical acts, which are now part of the public record and like part of the rich tapestry that is our heritage, and the acts of modern protesters. So rather than contextualizing the acts of our current protesters amid significant historical events, they're portrayed as sort of like an aberrant example of like stupid youth and carelessness. And the suffragettes actually received a similar reaction to their protests. This is from an article called "Why Did Suffragettes Attack Works of Art?" by Rowena Fowler. She writes that most members of the public, including most non-militant suffragettes, condemned the, quote, outrage to the Venus. One member resigned from the suffrage club, saying, "I consider that the destruction of works of art should be punishable by death." A correspondent to the Times recommended that the culprits should be forced to emigrate to Western Australia.
Oh, is that when it was prison?
I think it's fun that we're calling it emigration to Australia now.
Yeah. I think we kind of skipped over the first lady being like, oh, kill her. She messed up one painting? Yeah, murder her.
Yeah, kill her. And I want to draw attention to something else that Jake Tapper said, which is that if you can draw the connection between this and climate protests, this is like a thing that you hear a lot. That doesn't make sense. How is this possibly a protest of oil companies? And like, it's really helpful that we have the context of the suffragettes saying why they made these protests and what they hope to achieve. And it's just too bad that with the tomato soup protest, all we have is still photos and we don't have any record of what they were saying or what they could have possibly meant. Oh, what's this tab that's open on my computer pre-prepared for this podcast? Oh my gosh, it's video footage of what they said immediately after they poured the soup on the painting.
My God. Well, it must be just silence because we don't know what they were thinking.
You know, this is a fun bit, but even as you pointed out earlier, even if we couldn't hear what they are saying, they are wearing shirts that say "Just Stop Oil," though.
Yeah, but that could be any oil: cod liver oil, avocado oil. You never know.
You know what? I guess we'll never know. Oh, wait, except we can know because they're gonna.
It's impossible to tell, Nicole.
No, it's not impossible because they're going to tell us themselves. The audio that you're about to hear is from one of the protesters named Phoebe Plummer, seconds after the protesters took this action.
What is worth more, art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice? Are you more concerned about the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet and people?
This protester memorized that shit.
Yeah.
She booked this role.
Oh, yeah. They go on a little, but that is mainly the point. Like, what do you care about more, the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet?
Right. If this is shocking to you, boy, do I have some deeply impoverished people to show you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My one criticism of this kind of protest is like, I actually think people are so dense when it comes to art and this kind of thing that you need to be really explicit about even like, what do you care about more, art or life? Is like maybe just one step too far removed from like, think about how scared and upset you feel about damage to this valuable, irreplaceable thing.
Yeah.
And now imagine if this thing was the whole planet that sustains human life.
Yeah.
This is how upset you should be about the planet. I think you do have to be that explicit.
It's possible.
Because people see art and they're like, it must be obtuse and hard. And it's like, no, you just have to engage with it a little bit.
Now, do you think it's possible that you just don't understand these British women because they're not speaking in the accent that you know about?
Sure. If the protesters have been like, what do you like
exactly.
more, art or life?
You would be like,
then I'd be like, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. And I just want to point out that neither Fox nor Jake Tapper played this clip or offered any context. They were just like, this is stupid. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And you're a news program. You are a news program.
Well, actually, technically, Fox is an entertainment program.
Okay, that's true. That is true. Legally, they are an entertainment program.
And Jake Tapper is a sort of video game style narrator.
He does have, look at him real quick. He does kind of have the vibe of like, in a video game, there will be a painting that gives you the exposition. And that's what he looks like.
Yeah. The entire galaxy is overrun with crawlers. Use X to spin around. Use Y to back up.
Yeah, that's what Jake Tapper is. And it isn't just the tomato soup on the sunflowers protest, at the mashed potato at Monet's Muse protest.
You sound like the Frasier theme song.
Oh, baby, I hear the freezer calling.
Mashed potatoes on protesters.
And they said this in German, and I don't think we have a lot of German-speaking listeners, so I'm just going to go ahead and read the translation. We are in a climate catastrophe, and all you are afraid of is tomato soup or mashed potatoes on a painting. Do you know what I am afraid of? I am afraid because science tells us that we will not be able to feed our families in 2050. Do you need mashed potatoes on a painting to attract your attention? These paintings are not worth any more when we have to fight over food. When you get the point, pay attention to it carefully. Pay attention to it and don't overlook it.
Well, I couldn't make heads or tails of any of that, Nicole. What do these Germans mean?
Yeah, it could really mean anything. There is like one additional level of confusion with this protest that I do feel kind of clouds the issue and sort of distracts from the point that they're trying to make, which is that they threw mashed potatoes on this painting, but more specifically, they threw canned mashed potatoes on the painting in a can.
I'm not familiar with canned mashed potatoes.
Have you ever had canned mashed potatoes?
I guess I've had like mashed potatoes from a box, like dehydrated potatoes you mix with water.
It just doesn't feel like a food that belongs in a can to me.
It's true. I'm guessing that that's not what other people are bumping on. I think it's the art part that they didn't like.
I'm really bumping on the canned mashed potatoes.
Maybe every time it says canned mashed potatoes, just imagine it says ketchup.
Okay, that does help me. That does help me. Thank you. The product that we all know and love, canned ketchup. Mmm.
Hey, Rollie and producer Ben here. According to my City Bike app, I've ridden a bike 3,768 times in the last 8 years.
Hey, producer Ben here. I don't know my stats because I have my own bike like a normal person.
But we've both spent enough time on two wheels to know that one of the biggest downsides to riding a bike in New York is the rain. Well, not anymore, Jack.
And that's because a little brand called Cleverhood sent us rain gear that is built for people on bikes, and we've been wearing it constantly.
I wear mine even when I'm not biking because it's just good rain gear, but it's made specially to keep you pedaling without getting soaked.
Cleverhood makes waterproof yet breathable ponchos, capes, and jackets, but unlike most rain gear, Cleverhood produces all their gear completely PFAS-free, so you stay dry without all the toxic chemicals.
They've got great colors and designs like the new Doppler radar pattern, and Cleverhood even puts 5% of profits towards groups making walking and biking safer in cities.
So gear up, help the cause, and look good doing it. Head over to cleverhood.com/deniers for 15% off.
That's cleverhood.com/deniers. Stay dry, George Takei. I think it's actually Takei, but, that doesn't rhyme.
Yeah, it's Takei.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Okay, so I know that we're talking about museum protests mostly, but I do want to quickly touch on another form of protest that you see constantly getting like a huge backlash, and that is road blockages.
Yes.
People absolutely lose their shit over anything that disrupts their ability to drive places. And like particularly on Reddit, you see some like very violent rhetoric around it.
Yeah, it's the car brain in us,
Totally.
right? Like if you get stuck, you're stuck in your car already. And then if your car also stops, it's like a turducken trap and you're freaking out behind the wheel and you have no empathy for anybody around you.
Yeah.
If you get stuck on a train, it's like kind of fine. It's like annoying, but there's people around and you're not like physically freaking out. But like in a car, it is so different and visceral.
Yeah, you also are operating a weapon at the time, a huge weapon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm actually operating two weapons because I always have
You
my
always drive
handgun
with a
and
gun.
I fire it out what I now call the sunroof, which is just a fucking Swiss cheese roof that I have now.
Well, Rollie, it's funny you should make that joke because
Thank
I have
you.
an incredibly relevant clip from the Joe Rogan podcast.
Our favorite podcast.
Our favorite podcast.
More so than this podcast.
Yes, even more so than this podcast. This is a clip from June of 2024 in an episode that he recorded with comedian and Riyadh Comedy Festival legend Whitney Cummings.
You would never go sit in the road?
What?
That was like our main hobby. What are you talking
You guys would go sit in the road?
Yeah, of course.
Jesus Christ. Did you see that guy in Venezuela? I think it was. Was it Venezuela or somewhere where he shot stop oil protesters? Some guy just got out of his. He's an American.
I have seen
They
this.
were blocking the road. I don't know if it was a stop oil. It was some sort of a
Protester,
protest
like
where they
sitting on the
closed
ground.
road.
Yep.
This guy gets out, pulls out a gun, and just fucking shoots people.
It's
No.
like a ranger?
No.
Oh. Because I've
No.
seen the rangers like drag him out of the road.
I'll send it to you, Jamie. The video's available online, but this guy just pulls out a gun and starts whacking people. 77-year-old man from
Oh, I got Panama. I got it here.
What did you think was going to happen?
he shot two guys.
in the shoulder?
But there's a video that you can see him actually shooting people.
Yeah, but we don't need to be reposting that for.
Yeah, we don't need to see it. But
I
yeah.
mean,
But these fucking idiots that just block the road as if that's somehow or another going to fix everything, or the ones that go to fucking art galleries and smash paintings.
I do think that there's a little bit of an invincibility complex that comes in with knowing you're being filmed. Like they probably think, oh, there's a camera here. He's not going to shoot us.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's
Meanwhile,
almost like
he's probably got cancer. He's 77 years old.
he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
That's Clint Eastwood in every one of his movies.
Yeah.
Like, don't fuck with that guy. But I do think sometimes people think, oh, there's a camera rolling. No one's going to hurt me. But it's like, that's not
not
how
real,
everybody
bro.
thinks. That is so ridiculous. The idea that I'm going to throw soup at a painting.
Yeah, and I'm going to glue myself to the wall.
To stop. I mean, when I also try to go like, okay, when I was in college, I had a lot of really dumb ideas. That's what you're supposed to do in college. You're supposed to have dumb ideas. You're supposed to like be wrong, you know? But like the idea that we're taking any of this seriously, like, is just wild.
Well, it's just these like dumb virtue signaling kids that think they're going to fix the world by gluing themselves to a wall. Like, you fucking idiots.
Wow. The cynicism from these two gremlins is disgusting.
Yeah, to watch somebody get shot and be like, these idiots who glue themselves to the roads. It's like, that was your takeaway from the video where a guy gets murdered?
The dehumanization is a little tough for me to watch.
It's tough, especially in the context of everybody being so mad about an inanimate object getting the appearance of damaged, and not so much about this guy who got shot, about human life.
Murdered.
And there is a conflation of violence against objects with violence against people, kind of as a theme throughout people who are critical of these protests. And just for the record, this wasn't just Stop Oil. Not that I think they should be shot either.
Yeah.
But this protest in particular was an anti-mining protest, which was organized by Panamanian environmentalist, indigenous groups, and teachers and construction unions who see allegations of backroom dealings between the government and the mining company as further evidence of widespread official corruption.
Wow.
And that's a quote from a CNN article called "Two Demonstrators Killed Amid Anti-Mining Protests in Panama."
Jeez.
Again, like, one protest is not more legitimate than the other, but like, these aren't like blue-haired Vassar students who are in college where you're supposed to make stupid decisions. These are sort of a wide swath of Panamanian people who are like, our government is fucking us.
Yeah, and part of unions being like targeted by government corruption.
Yeah.
And they get murdered and laughed about.
By an American.
Wait, is that real?
Yes.
What was the American murdering people for?
Well, there was traffic.
Is that really why? That was the motivation?
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's really bad. And this does kind of show the normalization of a violent attitude towards climate protesters, disproportionate to what their action is.
Yeah. Their action is like, I souped the glass of this
Yeah.
painting, or like, you're stuck in traffic for a little while longer. Let's all think about the way. I mean, that wasn't even fucking climate protesters, though, in Panama.
It was anti-mining. I'll lump them in.
Okay. Well, it's like, your land is being raped here. Can we do something about this? And they're murdered for it.
It is interesting to see these commenters be like, well, what'd you expect? What did you expect was going to happen?
Yeah, like, that's an actual line Whitney Cummings just said. Like, what did they expect was going to happen? I guess not that they were going to get murdered.
Not murdered, but also, like, there is this attitude of like, well, if they knew they were going to get murdered, they wouldn't be out there. They think the camera makes them invincible. Or they think this is really important and worth risking physical violence for. But the way that violence is considered in these protests is, I think, often not quite accurate to what is actually happening. The two protesters who threw soup at the Van Gogh were sentenced recently, and a lot of people, myself included, were like, wow, that was a pretty hefty sentence for what they did. Phoebe Plummer, who was the one who spoke in the clip, was sentenced to 27 months, and Anna Holland was sentenced to 20 months imprisonment, with up to half of that being in custody since they were released with conditions this winter. And the judge who sentenced them said, I reject any suggestion that your offending can properly be described as peaceful or nonviolent. Throwing the contents of a tin of soup in somebody's face would not be a peaceful act, and there is nothing peaceful about throwing the contents of tins of soup at a painting in an art gallery with members of the public, including children, present. And it's like, okay, but those aren't the same thing.
That's not
Throwing
violence.
a tin of soup into somebody's face would be violence, but that it literally is not what they did. They threw it at an object, a valuable object, but it's not violence in the same way.
If anything, it's vandalism.
Yeah.
But 27, over 2 years is fucking crazy for a non-damaging, non-violent protest on behalf of the planet Earth.
Yeah. It does seem like a big sentence, and they can do it because a lot of people did view these protests critically. And
can you imagine if these climate protesters had shot someone in the face? That wouldn't be a peaceful act. Why is the soup on the painting a peaceful act?
And it's crazy. I mean, I don't know much about the British court system, so I'm approaching this from the perspective of an American who admittedly knows most of what I know about the court system from Law & Order.
Bum bum.
But like, you're a judge. It's your job to know, like, what the laws are. It's like it's a judge's job to know the difference between murder and manslaughter. And it's definitely the judge's job to know the difference between violence against a person and vandalism against a work of art.
Yeah, it kind of seems like the judge is trying to make a point, but he's stretching the law to fit what he wants to say. And what he wants to say is that vandalism against things is as bad as violence against people. And that's fucking stupid.
And what's wild is that these soup protesters have faced more prison time than pretty much any oil company executive. The people who are responsible for the Exxon Valdez oil spill off of Alaska didn't go to jail for 27 months. The people who are responsible for the BP oil spill, which I don't know if you guys have noticed, is much bigger than the soup spill.
Yeah.
the great soup spill incident. They didn't go to jail for 27 months. So we're really willing to hold these protesters accountable, but not the oil companies who are doing way worse stuff that people generally agree is also bad.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That like these oil protesters are getting way more jail time than people who are actually doing massive, massive damage to the environment, and nobody seems to like clock that.
Yeah, which makes their point in the context of like, do you care more about a painting or about the earth that sustains us all? I mean, it seems like the verdict is painting.
Yeah, painting. We're a bunch of painting heads here on the planet Earth.
Yeah. And if a judge is able to stretch the definition of violence in this sense to be like throwing soup at a painting is the same as throwing it at a person.
Yeah.
Like, how are we not talking about the actual lives that were taken by oil infrastructure?
Yeah, it's kind of strange. It's a little bit like, oh yeah, there just weren't children present in the Gulf of Mexico when the BP spill happened, but there could have been children at the museum when the soup was thrown, and so therefore it constitutes violence.
The logic just doesn't hold up, and it's the judge's purview to make a judgment. And so there is a world where you say, I'm giving you this harsh sentence because like maintaining our cultural traditions and what connects us to history is extremely valuable. And it's so valuable that you putting that at risk like deserves punishment. But to be like, it's violent is like, it's not.
Tough. Yeah, it does undermine the definition of violence for me personally.
Yeah.
So that's a bummer. I do know that like breathing smoke in someone's face counts as like battery, like assault and battery.
Sure, but again, you're doing that to a person.
I know, that's exactly right. Like you're actually like directing a thing to someone. So like the judge being like, yeah, what if they had thrown the soup in the face is like, great point, judge. They didn't though.
Yeah, what if they gave him a swirly in the toilet?
Yeah.
That would have been pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
But they also
what
didn't
if they
do
gave
that.
a kid a swirly? That kid would be scarred for life.
Absolutely.
40 years in the clink.
And so there's a huge willingness to say that the protesters are wrong and very little willingness to examine the ways in which they might be right. And there are some arguments in favor of the protesters and what they were doing. There's something called the radical flank effect. And I read a journal article called Radical Flanks of Social Movements Can Increase Support for Moderate Factions.
Hey.
And it describes two online experiments, one related to animal rights and the other to climate, that found that the presence of a radical flank increases support for a moderate faction within the same movement. Further, it is the use of radical tactics, such as property destruction or violence, rather than a radical agenda that drives this effect. So what that means is somebody who supports climate action might be like, oh, I don't like what these soup protesters are doing. I'm going to give a lot of money to the Sierra Club, or I'm going to volunteer for 350.org this weekend because I think those are responsible ways to protest.
Yeah, it really describes the Overton window, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, if we want to move the window towards a more progressive place, there needs to be a left side of the window that's like even more progressive than the center is going to be. And so, yeah, a radical flank is critical to any movement that wants to be progressive.
Yeah. And all of these arguments about like you're not convincing people or there's not a direct enough connection between what you're doing and climate kind of gets at the fundamental question of like, how do you protest right? Tapper says like your message is unclear. Rogan says, what did you expect to happen? The overriding theme is like, you're not doing it right. The protesters are doing it wrong.
Yeah, Hegseth actually said like they didn't actually damage the painting.
Yeah, so
and
that's
that was
not right.
Bad. Yeah.
everybody seems to have an opinion about like why this wasn't right or how they should have done it better. And so the question becomes, how do you protest right? Fine. Tell me how to do it the right way.
Meat cleaver, painting. Easy.
Perfect. A lot of people point to actions of the past and what is now viewed as like really meaningful actions by movements that got what they wanted and were on the right side of history, and say you should be more like them.
Yeah, like Tapper clocking that the suffragettes didn't do it this way.
Yeah.
They did it exactly that way that they did.
Or he brought up like the Boston Tea Party.
Right.
That kind of stuff. And this clip that I want to show you really explicitly compares the current actions by climate protesters to previous protesters who were ultimately successful and proven correct in time. This is Ann Pasternak, who is the director of the Brooklyn Museum.
Clearly, we are in a moment of clear climate catastrophe. And I absolutely understand why climate activists, who I'm grateful to for constantly ringing the alarm bells to this catastrophe, are using every means necessary to call attention to the situation we're in as a planet. And I would be worried if museums were not somehow or other involved in this conversation. It would mean that we were absolutely irrelevant, and we're not irrelevant. We should be a part of the solution. So I understand what's going on. I just kind of long for the good old days of like ACT UP and AIDS activism, where they were really creative about their activism and they weren't destroying anything, but they were having really great artistic kinds of actions that got global press and positive attention. I don't think this really, I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert on the subject, but I really would have to question that this has any positive outcome for climate change.
So first of all, I want to say off the bat, I think like I don't want to lump her in with the Jake Tappers and the Fox and Friends of the world. I think she obviously has a much more nuanced perspective on this whole thing. And also, like, I have to reiterate, an essential element of this protest, for it to mean anything, is that museums want it not to happen. Like, if the director of the Brooklyn Museum was like, come on in, throw soup at all our shit,
Fuck
then
these
the
paintings.
protest wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Museums like are fulfilling a role in this protest by protecting the artwork.
Yeah, I guess this is not the right person to ask, like, hey, do you think throwing shit on paintings is positive?
Yeah.
She's like, what? No.
I run an art museum.
My paintings? No.
Yeah. So, like, I don't totally want to throw her under the bus here, but she does bring up ACT UP, sort of the big protest movement in the 80s that was about the AIDS crisis and was largely made up of gay men who were like, hey, you're killing us with your AIDS policies. They're probably most famous for their die-ins, which is where they would go to a public place and they would lie down and die so that people could have a visceral physical image of the hordes of people that were dying as part of the AIDS crisis. They also did some other actions. One funny one is that they put a giant condom over Senator Jesse Helms' house.
That takes some engineering.
I'll put a picture of it in the show notes. It's pretty funny. I mean, it also, like, they attacked him specifically because he, like, opposed, like, safe sex education and, like, AIDS funding. So he deserved it, but putting a condom over a guy's house, pretty funny. But they were also arrested and seen by a lot of people as a nuisance at the time. One of their actions, called Stop the Church, is one that was pretty unpopular. During Stop the Church, ACT UP protesters staged one of their die-ins during a Catholic mass attended by high-profile New York politicians. When the mass continued, despite the die-in, they disrupted mass, stood up on the pews and shouted, crumbled up the Eucharist, and prevented parishioners from receiving it.
Not the Eucharist!
And had to be carried out. That is funny, but for Catholics, that's, like, big. That's like a big bad thing to crumble up the Eucharist like that.
Is molesting children big for Catholics too? Got your ass.
I'm just saying, if the point is they were creative and they didn't destroy anything, they actually committed what many people would view as like a serious act.
The crumpled Eucharist. Yeah, I mean, sir, this is exactly the same as like the suffragettes wouldn't do this.
Yes.
And it's like, bitch, like, look, sorry.
Bitch was about Jake Tapper. She never referenced.
No, it was about her.
Okay.
And it's like, lady, yes, they did and would.
And it was viewed unpopularly at the time. David N. Dinkins, who was then the mayor-elect, and Governor Mario M. Cuomo name sound familiar, said that they deplored the demonstration, and Andy Hum, a spokesman for the Coalition of Gay and Lesbian Rights, said the demonstration was, quote, stupid and wrong-headed. And there are many more quotes about that. So, like, that was unpopular in its time. I think we got to make the point, like, protest is disruptive. It is. And if you do disagree with a specific protest, that's fine. But disagreeing with it simply because it's disruptive is like, that's just what they are.
Yeah, it's like, hey, did you hear our protest? Where was it? Oh, we went to this very deserted area and we all like hung out there.
Didn't bother anybody.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, I didn't hear about it. What was
Yeah.
that? And yet, like, we're kind of all still talking about this fucking soup on the glass. Like, I don't know.
Just Stop Oil made an official statement that they're stopping their art protests over a year ago, and we're still talking about it. People still bring it up. And people might view protests now more positively because they're not being disruptive to your current life, and it was proven right. And if it's not bothering you right now, then it seems good. But a lot of these actions from the past were disruptive and unpopular. So, Rollie, I'm going to kind of tee you up and do a leading question.
Okay.
Who would you say is the most effective civil rights protester ever?
Rosa Parks.
Shit. Well, actually, we can talk about her.
Nice.
Sorry
you hate talking about Rosa so much, Nicole.
Well, first we're going to talk about MLK.
Okay.
Martin Luther King Jr. is like sort of widely viewed as like he did it the right way. Currently, per the Smithsonian, over 80% of Americans have a very positive view of Martin Luther King Jr. and what he did for civil rights in the country. A lot of times people will be like, he was nonviolent. He got things done the right way. However, at the time, people didn't necessarily feel that way. The Smithsonian has an article called, "Even though he is revered today, MLK was widely disliked by the American public when he was killed." And it goes on to say 75% of Americans disapproved of the civil rights leader as he spoke out against the Vietnam War and economic disparity.
Wow. And I will say that when he did the March on Washington, they were going to occupy all of Washington, and they kept on getting negotiated down by the government until it was just like, you're just going to march on this one section of the mall. And Martin Luther King Jr. thought of that as a massive failure.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do anything disruptive. They just, like, we all remember the I Have a Dream speech, but like Martin Luther King Jr. didn't think of that as like, wow, I really aced that speech. It was like, I failed in my attempt to protest properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was navigating a very different social time. It was not like a super receptive audience. And there were arguments within the civil rights movement about like the best way to handle things. Like there was sort of a schism between him and Malcolm X about like the extent to which we should be working within the system or using violence or like what our methods should be. Like I just said, part of the reason that he was unpopular is that he was opposing the Vietnam War, and other civil rights leaders were like, we need to be laser focused on this one thing. That's sort of like the climate movement. You know, should we be laser focused on CO2 or should we also talk about food justice and environmental justice? So great. We all remember Martin Luther King Jr. for his civil rights accomplishments, but that opinion was not so cut and dry at the time it was happening. And just a second ago, you mentioned Rosa Parks, who was part of the Montgomery bus boycotts, which are again viewed as like a very successful civil rights movement and a very successful nonviolent protest. Those were quite unpopular in the area at the time. The director of the bus company had a heart attack, and there was an article that blamed that on the stress of the protests. There were articles that were like, think about how mean you're being to the bus company. They were sued for like doing an illegal boycott, which, just as a side note, I don't totally understand how deciding not to buy something is like, I can just choose not to buy stuff. That's allowed, but whatever. Like those also were not like the most popular, and people now in retrospect are like, what a great job you did.
Yeah, it's like when you're in the present, any destruction of art or any like, oh, the boycott that this company is going out of business, like that feels like fragile and like you should save it, and the status quo has a real strong hold in the psyche of the modern person, the person living right now. But in the past, it's like, oh yeah, whatever. The 1960s bus company, yeah, fuck them. They were being racist. Like, yeah, go Rosa Parks, go Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah, you just forget that the people in the past, it was the present then for them. And they didn't feel the same way that you do.
Like a guy who smoked too much weed being like, I just realized that for people who lived in the past, It was the present for them.
And now is the future for them. It's like we as a society are consistently living the hotboxed dorm understanding of the past, for sure.
Yeah. And we have a really good recent example of what it looks like to try very hard to thread the needle and get it right. And that example is Colin Kaepernick. For those of you who don't remember, in 2016, Colin Kaepernick was a quarterback for the 49ers. Very talented guy, very high profile. He stopped standing during the national anthem as his sort of form of personal protest. I don't think he originally intended it to be a big statement. People didn't even really notice at first. And then when they noticed, they were like, hey, what's going on with this? And he said, I'm not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses Black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. And also, once again, I'm not anti-American. I love America. I love people. That's why I'm doing this. I want to help make America better. And he wasn't being disruptive. He was just not standing during the national anthem, and people hated that. And he got criticized by a ton of people. So after criticism, where people were like, you hate our troops, it's disrespectful to our troops, he had a conversation with Nate Boyer, who was a former Green Beret and an NFL player, and they kind of came to the decision that he would be with his teammates, but he would take a knee instead of sitting down, and that would be more respectful towards the troops. Nate Boyer told HBO's Real Sports that soldiers take a knee in front of a fallen brother's grave, you know, to show respect. So
he talked to a troop. The troop was like, okay, if you want to make sure that no one thinks you're disrespecting the troops, take a knee.
Yeah.
No one can misread that.
Yeah.
This is how troops show respect. You show respect like this. Bada bing, bada boom. You got it.
Yes. Continued to get booed by fans almost immediately. People continued to criticize him, largely on the right, for this protest. He opted out of his contract with the 49ers, and then a bunch of like pretty mediocre quarterbacks were getting signed. And he wasn't. And nobody explicitly said anything, but it does really feel like he was blackballed for doing the protest in the way that he was told to do the protest. In the 2017 season, a few other football players were also taking a knee during the anthem, but Kaepernick was the highest profile. He's the one who started it.
Gotcha.
Then in the 2017 season, Donald Trump said that team owners should, quote, get any son of a bitch who didn't stand for the anthem off the field. And he tweeted, if a player wants the privilege of making millions of dollars in the NFL or other leagues, he or she should not be allowed to disrespect our great American flag or country and should stand for the national anthem. If not, you're fired. Find something else to do. At this point, Colin Kaepernick was no longer signed to an NFL team.
Wow.
He was no longer signed to an NFL team. And then by mid-May 2017, owners ruled that players could no longer kneel during the anthem without being subject to punishment, but allowed that they could remain in the locker room during the anthem. So explicitly, he figured out the right way to protest, like really worked with somebody who was affected by it and was like, I'm going to do this in the most respectful way possible. And then he lost his job, the president got mad at him, and the NFL banned that form of approved protest forever. And by the way, it's not illegal to sit down during the national anthem. That is like a very legal thing to do. The NFL as a private organization can make rules that say you have to stand, but like it's not the law.
Sure.
So like for a relatively minor protest, like Colin Kaepernick got totally blackballed.
It is so stupid to me that like he talked to a guy who was like, yeah, here's how to do it. And he's like, great, I will be respectful. I will say I respect all these things. And like, they didn't care what his motivations are. They just like read their own opinion onto the optics and just like decided what he was feeling and blackballed him.
And all of that raises the question, like, so why even bother trying to do the quote unquote right protest that won't bother anybody? Like, how are you supposed to pick? And I think at the end of the day, my point with this episode is twofold. I think the media needs to do better coverage of disruptive actions. Obviously, with like these climate protests, it's putting them in the context of literally what the protesters are saying and explaining what the protest means, contextualizing it within the context of the climate crisis, for example, maybe putting it in the context of history and not in the disingenuous way Jake Tapper does. Maybe not putting a murder on your podcast and being like, what did they expect?
Yeah. Yeah. That was dark. That was a dark moment in the Rogan-verse.
Yeah, it was bad. And so, like, I think if the media wants to be involved in the conversation, then they have to do it at a level that is, like, more than ankle deep, you know?
Sure.
And the other point is that kind of across the climate movement, we spend too much time worrying about doing it right. And I'm not arguing that everybody should be out there throwing soup or that you should love this method of protest, but we are not making progress trying to do things the right way.
Yeah.
And like sanctioned marches in streets where we have permits and going to lobbying days and signing petitions, like it's not doing it.
Yeah, I've literally been to a dozen climate marches in the past year or two, and like I'm not sure any policy got changed because of any of those marches.
Yeah.
Like, what is the thing that's going to do it? If the march and the nonviolent protest isn't moving the needle, can you blame groups for starting to branch out into like soup on the glass?
Yeah. And well-meaning people criticize these protests for being too disruptive, but climate change is going to be insanely disruptive. One example that I read was like people are very concerned with like protecting these pieces of art and human heritage, as they should be. Again, like part of the point of the protest is you should be attached to those things. But the article contrasts that to Tuvalu and the people who live there. For people who don't know, that is an island nation that is usually referenced as like they are going to be people who will absolutely get fucked by climate change. They are very low-lying. The islands are going to be underwater very soon. And that includes all of their art and all of their human heritage, all of the materials used to make like the very specific cloth that they use. And there isn't the same degree of wanting to protect that human heritage as there is for a Monet painting. And in order to protect all of human heritage, we're going to need to be disruptive in some way. If that's not throwing soup at a painting, then fine. But we have to be more comfortable being disruptive than we have historically been, is my take on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as though nobody historically has been comfortable with the disruption, like as evidenced by the suffragette protesting being unpopular at the time, civil rights protesting being unpopular at that time. So maybe it's just like in 20 years, people are going to look back at the soup protests as being like, oh yeah, great job, you guys.
Yeah.
I don't know. And also, we keep saying soup protests, and that sort of conjures an image.
Protest.
It's a climate protest.
They're protesting soup.
Wherein soup is hurled at the
I
glass
hate
of
clam
paintings.
chowder.
Yeah. Tomato get bent. Yeah. I guess like the big sort of perfect protest people point to is the Greta Thunberg, like, I have a sign, I'm outside of my government building, and a movement builds and builds and builds, and there's all these like non-violent groups and marches forming. And despite technically checking all the right boxes, it was still relentlessly attacked and mocked by a lot of different groups. For one, like, oh, it's not doing enough. For two, like, oh, here's Greta Thunberg surrounded by a plastic container. Oh, Greta, so I guess you don't really believe that petroleum is bad, do you? You know, it's like there's no, even the girl who did what a lot of people consider the perfect protest, right? She's just outside of Parliament with the sign, and that becomes a whole movement, and then she's getting invited to the UN. Like that, by all accounts, was an incredible protest.
She was relentlessly attacked on Fox News
Absolutely.
when she was like 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like there's no perfect way to do. I think that maybe the big conclusion is that there is no perfect way to protest, because like the really effective versions of protest that really like get people going are going to feel bad for the majority of people, but are actually going to get people to a place where action being taken isn't quite so radical seeming. So maybe like throwing soup on a painting getting a lot of blowback is maybe a sign that it actually is a good version of protest.
It could be. And the other thing is like I do think we're just too close in time to say for sure. And my instinct is that probably the soup protest did end up having a positive effect, but whether or not it did, the arguments that it's creating are not as productive as simply taking action in a way that you feel that you can do.
Yeah.
You know what a really ineffective form of protest is?
What's up?
Improv comedy.
Improv comedy. Hey, give me an example of an ineffective protest.
Petition.
I heard improv comedy. Very good. Okay. All right, Nicole, let's try this. You be like a suffragette.
Oi.
And
I'm a suffragette.
Perfect. And Nicole, where'd you go? And what is the suffragette doing here?
I'm a suffragette. I am.
Wow, you really transform. And I'm gonna be critiquing your protest as a man.
Hello, patrons of this museum. I have just slashed this painting with my big butcher knife.
Look, lady, I don't know what you're trying to prove here, but this kind of protest has no place in modern society.
Well, what I'm trying to prove is that women should have the right to vote.
Okay, yeah, but you're going about it all the wrong way, and it's never going to be an effective form of protest. First of all, I don't understand what kind of point you're trying to make by cutting up a painting. Are you saying you hate paintings? See, that's why no one's going to remember the suffragette movement as being an effective way to abolish problems.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay.
I'm saying everybody's all worried about this fake woman in this here painting, when really there's a woman named Mrs. Pankhurst who's in jail, and all of you people don't give two wits about her.
Now look, people...
Because she's standing up for the right to vote.
Look, lady, people are just going to remember the suffragette movement as a bunch of ladies who didn't like drawings, okay? This is nothing like the American Revolution, which was a largely non-violent protest against the tyranny of the British. That's how you got to protest.
It's called the Revolution.
Yeah, a revolution.
They had guns and stuff.
A revolution of ideas, okay? The most of the fighting was ornamental. Really, it was about peacefully protesting.
Was ornamental?
That's right,
what
yeah.
Does that mean?
Well, it means that it basically didn't happen, and that's not how people are going to remember it.
It very much did happen. They threw a bunch of tea into the harbor.
Yeah, but you know what they didn't do? You know what they didn't do?
What?
They didn't slash a painting, lady. Okay, you've gone too far. Tea is an inanimate object that loves water, okay? That's how tea works. You put tea leaves in water, it becomes tea.
Are you arguing that the tea was sentient and wanted to be poured in the water?
Absolutely not, but I am arguing that if tea was alive, it would want to go in water. And if a painting was alive, it would want to not be slashed up. Ergo, your protesting form is flawed. Therefore, no one will ever remember the suffragettes as anything other than a bunch of confused ladies with butcher knives.
Look, as a proud British lady, I have some very strong opinions about tea. And I know if I had been alive during the American Revolution, I would have been pretty mad about that tea. But in retrospect, what they was doing was the right thing to do.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It was the right thing for them to do. And this protest you're doing is the wrong thing for you to do. And I think the future will remember that.
Okay, here's the thing. A bunch of us...
What are you going to do? Kill me with your butcher knife? What's that going to prove? You hate people who work at museums?
I never said I was going to kill you with
you're
my
brandishing
butcher knife.
that knife around pretty violently.
I'm gesturing with it, but I only brought it to do the painting.
Gestures are violent.
What?
Your gestures are violent.
It's not violent.
Your accent is violence against the British.
I hit an inanimate object.
Well,
I hit an inanimate fucking object.
Well, you know
which
what?
Which is a reference to a film that will come out in about, let's say 100 years.
You know what? In 100 years, that film's going to come out, and then at some point, one of the characters is going to say, "Do you remember the suffragette movement?" And another character is going to say, "No."
Well, I don't think that would really fit in the theme of the film because it's not about voting.
1776, okay? The American Revolution is a proud moment. Everyone agreed that putting the tea in the harbor was the right decision.
The Climate Deniers Playbook was created by Rollie Williams, Ben Boult, and me, Nicole Conlan. Rollie and I are the hosts, Ben is the executive producer, and the show is edited by Laura Conte.
The show is also produced by Daniella Philipson and Irene Plagianos.
Archival research by Margaux Sachs, with additional research and fact-checking by Rizzuto and Canute Haroldson.
Our theme music was created by the wickedly talented Tony Dominic.
And our show's artwork is by Jordan Dahl, who, used to be my fiancé, but now he's my husband.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
And special thanks to the Civil Liberties Defense Center.
And to all of you who listen to the show.
And apparently, even the credits.
Rollie, don't neg our listeners.
Well, how else am I going to demonstrate I'm a high-value male?
Oh, God, don't ever say high-value male ever again.
But I am a high-value male.
Why aren't you wearing that top hat?
Because it makes me tall. I love painting.